8 markers in this video. The 4 in competency 3, the 4 in competency 4. For each marker, 3 things. Marker text in plain language, 1 transcript moment that demonstrates it. The listening test you apply when you hear something similar in a real session. The video closes with 2 within competency cuts, 3.1 versus 3.3 and 4.1 versus 4.3, because those are the discriminations that decide marker calls in mentor coaching, and both are listening test calls, not scoring calls. Open the quick reference card. Let's go. Competency 3 is establishes and maintains agreements. At PCC, this competency is about partnership on what the client wants and staying in the direction of that desired outcome across the session. ACC asked you to identify the topic. PCC asks you to partner on the agreement, partner on the measure of success, partner on what the client believes they need to address, and then carry that agreement forward as the client refines it. The 4 markers, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. Track that arc. 3.1 starts it. 3.2 makes it measurable. 3.3 anchors what makes the work matter. 3.4 makes what the client needs to address explicit. None of these is a one-time question. Each is a partnership move that returns when the work demands it. Listen for the partnership language. What would you like? How would we know? What about this matters? What might you need to address? Those are the C3 stems. 3.1, coach partners with the client to identify or reconfirm what the client wants to accomplish in this session. The marker fires when the coach asks what the client wants out of this hour and partners on that answer, not what do you want to talk about. That is topic identification, ACC level. What would you like to walk away with at the end of this session? That is partnership on outcome. Reconfirm matters. The client's outcome shifts mid-session. PCC asks the coach to notice the shift and partner again. You started wanting clarity on the role. It sounds like the work has shifted to clarity on what you want from your boss in this conversation. Want to make that the outcome. That second move is also 3.1, listening test. Is the coach asking what the client wants to accomplish and waiting for an actual answer the client owns? If yes, the marker is present. If the coach proposed and the client agreed, the marker is thin. 3.2, coach partners with the client to define or reconfirm measure of success for what the client wants to accomplish in this session. 3.2 is the marker most often missed at PCC. ACC trained coaches name the topic and start coaching. PCC asks for the measure. How will we know we got there? What this sounds like. You want clarity on the role. What would clarity look like by the end of this hour? What would you have that you do not have now? That is 3.2. The coach is asking the client to define the success criterion before the work begins. Reconfirm matters here too. The measure can shift. You said clarity meant a written list. We are now talking about what you would say to your boss tomorrow. Is the success criterion the list or the conversation? Both versions of 3.2, initial define, mid-session reconfirm, count. Listening test. Did the client name how they would know? If the coach inferred or stated the measure, the marker is missing. 3.3, coach inquires about or explores what is important or meaningful to the client about what they want to accomplish in this session. 3.3 is the why it matters marker. The session has an outcome. 3.3 asks, why does that outcome matter to you right now in your life? What this sounds like. You want clarity on the role. What about this matters most to you? Or after the client answers, what would having that clarity make possible that you do not have access to now? Either move is 3.3. The marker has to land. A coach who asks, "Why is this important?" and gets a one-line answer and moves on has the shape. A coach who asks, "Here's the answer," stays with it, and lets the client articulate the meaning has the depth. Listening test. Did the meaning of the work surface in the client's own language? If you heard the client name what makes this matter to them, 3.3 is demonstrated. If the coach moved on after a thin answer, 3.3 is shape only. 3.4. Coach partners with the client to define what the client believes they need to address to achieve what they want to accomplish in this session. 3.4 is the operational bridge between the outcome and the work. The client wants clarity on the role. What do they believe they need to address in order to get there? Sometimes that is internal, their own resistance, their own assumptions. Sometimes that is external, a conversation, a decision, a piece of information. What this sounds like. In order to leave today with that clarity, what would we need to look at? Or, more pointed, what is in the way of you having that clarity right now? Both versions are 3.4. The marker is the client's call, not the coach's. PCC asks for partnership. The coach asks the question. The client names what they need to address. The coach does not propose the work. Listening test. Did the client name what they need to look at? If the coach stated it, the marker is missing. 3.1 and 3.3 sound similar. Both are about what the client wants. Both invite the client into the agreement. The cut decides which marker fires. 3.1 is what the client wants. The outcome, the destination of the session. 3.3 is why it matters. The meaning behind the destination. Concrete. What would you like to walk away with at the end of this hour? That is 3.1. What about that matters most to you right now? That is 3.3. Same conversation, different markers. Most candidates demonstrate 3.1 cleanly and skim 3.3. They name the topic, agree on the outcome, and start coaching. The why never gets asked. The session does not lack agreement, it lacks anchor. When you mentor, watch for this. A candidate who hits 3.1 strong and 3.3 thin is the most common ACC to PCC pattern in C3. The fix is one question. What about this matters? Teach the candidate to ask it and to wait for the answer. Competency 4 is cultivates trust and safety. ACC asks the coach to be respectful, attentive, present. PCC asks for active partnership in the container. The coach acknowledges what the client brings, their talents, their insights, their work. The coach acknowledges what the client expresses, their feelings, their perceptions, their concerns. The coach invites the client to respond to the coach's contributions and accepts what the client says back. 4 markers: 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4. 3 of the 4, 4.1, 4.3, 4.4, are also C2 proxy markers. When you tag a C4 proxy, you are evidencing both cultivates trust and safety and embodies a coaching mindset in the same moment. 4.4 is where ACC trained coaches most often fall short at PCC. 4.4 is partnership, not delivery. ACC coaches deliver insight. PCC coaches offer and invite. We will land on 4.4 specifically. 4.1, coach acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. 4.1 is acknowledgement of what the client brings, not generic praise. Specific, the talent the client used to navigate this, the insight the client just had, the work the client is doing right now in this session. what this sounds like. The way you are holding both your team's reaction and your own boundary at the same time, that is unusually integrated. Or you just named the pattern out loud for the first time. That took something. Both are 4.1. The coach is naming what the client brought and naming it with specificity. 4.1 is also a C2 proxy. When 4.1 fires, it accumulates evidence for coaching mindset. Listening test. Did the coach acknowledge something specific the client brought to the session? Not generic affirmation, but a specific talent, insight, or piece of work. If yes, 4.1 is present. 4.2, coach shows support, empathy, or concern for the client. 4.2 is the human marker. Tone, presence, the body of the coach acknowledging the body of the client, the marker that holds the relational floor of the session. What this sounds like, that sounds heavy. Or simply the pause, the soft landing, the way the coach receives what the client just said before asking the next question. 4.2 is often nonverbal in transcript. You hear it in the cadence. 4.2 is not a C2 proxy. It is its own marker. It does not require the coach to be effusive. In fact, ACC-trained coaches sometimes overdo 4.2 in a way that feels performative. PCC 4.2 is calibrated to the client. The client cried. The coach noticed and waited. The client made a hard admission. The coach received it without rushing to reframe. Listening test. Did the coach respond to the human dimension of what the client said, in tone, in pacing, in presence? If yes, 4.2 is demonstrated. 4.3, coach acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings, perceptions, concerns, beliefs, or suggestions. 4.3 is acknowledgement of what the client expresses, the affect, the meaning making, the worldview the client is putting on the table. Where 4.1 acknowledges what the client brings, 4.3 acknowledges what the client says, what this sounds like. That belief that you have to have it figured out before you can act, I hear how strong that is for you. Or the frustration with your boss is right at the surface. That is real. Both are 4.3. 4.3 is a C2 proxy. When the coach acknowledges and supports the client's expression of feelings or beliefs, it evidences coaching mindset alongside trust and safety. The marker requires acknowledgement, not interpretation. A coach who hears the client name a feeling and immediately reframes it has not demonstrated 4.3. The acknowledgement has to land before the coaching move. Listening test. Did the coach name what the client expressed and let it sit before moving forward? If yes, 4.3. 4.4, coach partners with the client by inviting the client to respond in any way to the coach's contributions and accepts the client's response. 4.4 is the partnership marker, and it is the marker most ACC-trained coaches do not yet demonstrate at PCC. What this sounds like. The coach offers an observation, a reflection, an intuition, then invites the client to do something with it. Here is what I'm noticing. What does that land like for you? Or, this is what I am hearing, take it or leave it. Then accepts the client's response, including pushback. The acceptance is the second half. ACC coaches often offer, then double down when the client does not bite. PCC coaches offer, invite, and accept. If the client says, that is not it, PCC follows the client. ACC re-explains. 4.4 is a C2 proxy, listening test. 2 questions. Did the coach invite the client to respond to a coach contribution? Did the coach accept what the client said back, including disagreement? Both yes, 4.4 is present. 4.1 and 4.3 are both acknowledgement markers. Both fire from a C2 proxy designation. The cut is what is being acknowledged. 4.1 acknowledges what the client brings, their talents, their insights, their work. The object is something the client owns, a capacity, an observation, an act. 4.3 acknowledges what the client expresses, their feelings, their perceptions, their concerns, their beliefs, their suggestions. The object is the client's expression, what the client put into language in this conversation. Concrete. You handled that conversation with your team with real care. That is 4.1, acknowledging a piece of work. I hear how much it weighs that you did not say what you wanted to say. That is 4.3, acknowledging an expressed feeling. Same warmth, different objects. The cut matters because evaluations need precision. When you tag, ask, is the coach acknowledging what the client brings or what the client is expressing right now? That tells you which marker fires. C3 and C4 done. 8 markers walked, 2 with incompetency cuts named the listening test in your ear. What the next video does. C5 maintains presence. 5 markers. The first appearance of the who versus what pattern in 5.1 and 5.2, and a deep stop on 5.5, allows for silence, pause, or reflection, because that is the marker most ACC-trained coaches think they have, and the marker that most often distinguishes a PCC level container from an ACC level one. Take a beat. Open the quick reference card to C5 if you have not yet. The presence work is next.